Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. Has appropriate meeting notification been done? Wonderful. Let's please stand. If all would please rise, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Here. Look for a motion for approval of meeting minutes for July 7th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On to comments and suggestions from citizens. I've not received any of the blue cards. Do we have any comments from citizens in the audience? With no comments, we'll move forward to the consent agenda items listed, A through E on your agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Move on to committee reports. Start with Public Services. Consider act on Resolution 20-R2884, awarding Roosevelt Park Shelter Materials Contract.
Good evening.
Mr. Hepner.
Thank you. Tonight we're looking to have you approve the Roosevelt Park Shelter Materials bid. As you know, we demolished the shelter back this winter because it was structurally unsound, and the Common Council agreed to finance a new shelter which will go on the south side of Forest Street. This is the beginning of that process. To save some cost, our department is acting as a general contractor. So tonight's bid is strictly for the shelter materials, the delivery of those, and the design engineering. There will be some concrete, installation, electric, and signage coming yet. We sent this out for public construction bids, received 3 bids back, and those are summarized for you. The low bid is Keeper Goals RCP Shelters, and that bid is $41,410. We have reviewed all the bids. We check references. We've actually looked at all their specific shelters that are in southeast Wisconsin. We feel very confident that Keeper Goals RCP Shelters can provide the required design and materials, and tonight we're asking for your approval. And one thing to mention, we are not asking for a contingency for this. This is strictly for materials, delivery, and the design. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Kavieski.
When will this be complete?
Great question. Generally, it'll be about 8 to 10 weeks for the delivery of the materials after we sign off on their design, which will be about 2 weeks from now. If it's approved, as soon as we get the design, then we would send out for the concrete and installation quotes. So the plan is to have this done yet in 2020.
Follow-up?
Yes, please.
Is it possible to put a rendering or an image of what the public should expect out on the website when that design is complete?
Sure, that would be great. We'd love to show the actual design and what it will look like in person. Sure.
Thank you.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to new business. Consider act on approving settlement agreement between Waterview Condominiums LLC and the City of Oconomowoc regarding Waukesha County Circuit Court Case Number 19-CV-1233. Attorney Riffle.
Yeah, if you would. So, deja vu all over again. We revisit this situation. Let's go back to 2017 when the developer came in for the first time, recognizing that the zoning district that we are in here, the Isthmus zoning district, allows for a density of 13 units on the lands that would be assembled for this, okay? What you see right here is what was proposed in 2017 and what could be proposed if we don't take the bull by the horns here. I'm just telling you what could possibly happen. So what was proposed back then, as you see, was this, which didn't meet with staff too much approval, and/or the folks in the area thought that this really wasn't anything that looked like what the ISMIS design standards would, would embrace. So that's what happened then. So after staff said, no, go back to the drawing board, the developer came back with 2 buildings for a total of 9 units. Recall that we could have 13 units on this for zoning purposes, but not for the design standards, which I've been over and over again. So I don't know if I need to go through that again, even for the public, because I think the public understands this too. So this is what was proposed in 2019, and this was what was, that went to the Architectural Control Committee. And you remember that, of course, they recused themselves because they had a lot of problems with regard to personal involvement, business and otherwise. And so we retained a hearing examiner who primarily looked at the report of the independent architect firm for Madison, ISMIS Design, that provided expert advice to the Architectural Control Committee, as is contemplated in your ordinance. And so after that hearing examiner looked at all of the evidence, and primarily, again, the input from the independent expert, he basically said that it does not meet the design standards primarily, not exclusively, but primarily because the size and the mass of the proposed development. So, in the background, there were other architectural approvals that you see here that gave me concern. Because if you look at this and you look at what was proposed before, I thought that we might have some concerns about that. In any event, we went to the circuit court. Judge, as I've told you before, and I think related in my memo to you, had a grave concern about property rights, where you are allowed as a matter of right 13 units in this zoning district, and then you have to juxtapose that against some architectural standards. So can you trump property rights with some sort of ethereal standards in some respects? We made our best argument. We were able to avoid the court ordering us to grant what was there before. It was sent back to the city, and the direction on the remand to the city was, okay, take another look at the design that we saw before, which was the two buildings, but you must analyze that on the basis of excluding any consideration of size or mass. So, came back in our lap. Enter new mayor. New mayor says, Stan, I want you to talk to the developer. I want to find out, because I think that there might be some public interest in attempting to make a, silk out of a sow's ear here. I did, and what I was able to discern, and we ultimately, okay, good. What we were able to work out was a proposed deal here. Recognize that if the Common Council doesn't intervene here, goes back to the Architectural Control Commission, they will make a decision one way or the other. If it's against the developer, it would be appealed to the Plan Commission. If the Plan Commission agrees with whatever the determination is, and if it's against the developer, I can damn well guarantee you that it's going back to circuit court. And I have grave concerns about how that might hold up if it's against the developer, because ultimately, I stated that the court sent it back here. So the deal that was sort of teed up for your consideration, and so that you could make the final determination on this, is we found out that the owner of the parcel, who's also a investor in the Renner development, he owns what we see up here as Peacock Park. Now, the configuration of what he owns right now is a little bit smaller, but the proposal is that he would sell that to someone for $600,000, and the city would then accept it as a gift to the city. It would be deed restricted so that it would always be a park, and that would become a passive park there where you could kayak, hit kayaks and canoes and whatever portage to cross between the two lakes. Fishing, passive walking, perfect to be, walking around Fowler Lake. Oh, I started up here, I just want to rest over here. And the prospect of acquiring the 517 parcel, which would then cost $1.35 million. And that would be likewise dedicated to the city as a park and deed restricted, so there would always be a park. And so we would either have a larger park or a smaller park. Give the opportunity to the interested people in the community. If they can't come up with that by January 31 of 2021, then you would see exactly what you will have. It will be an 8-family unit that looks like, well, okay. But yeah, before we get into this, while we were trying to talk with the developer, we wanted to bring in somebody that is on the architectural control. Mr. Johnson was kind enough to meet with the Renner folks. He added his input, and at the end of the day, here's what he had the opportunity to look at the design. He actually had the opportunity to give input into the design, and frankly, he feels that, especially given the approvals that the Art Commission has made, that this should be strongly considered by the Common Council. He believes that they've done a good job of trying to be consistent with that period. So what we see now is something that if you'll look at some of we don't have to go back to it, but as you can see, it attempts to give homage to, the design. If you compare this to what the first design was, it is infinitely better. As you'll note that the design flips the prior proposal from parallel to the North Lake to perpendicular, smaller, face, facade. And so what you are being asked to do tonight, I can go through the rest of these, the renderings here. So what you are primarily being asked here tonight is, do you want to take control of this, or do you want to not? And that's fine. Either way you go, but this is the only chance that the Common Council has to control this situation. Because if you don't, and that would be through a stipulation and order for judgment in the circuit court and a judgment. That would let everybody know exactly what their rights are. You raise the 1.35 million, that won't happen. If you don't, that will happen. Without further ado. So, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, but before I do, I'd be more than happy to accept any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Ellis.
Yeah, isn't there a time limit to that, getting those funds available?
January 31st, 2021.
And what if they only get half of it? or 2/3 of it? Could the city come in and say, well,
You can do anything you want.
What we need to discuss now, I think.
I don't know that I would do that, but I would rather do that in closed session. Rather than, you haven't even done your budget yet for next year. I don't think it's a good idea. But your policy, sorry, backing off.
Other questions for Attorney Riffle? Alderman Rogers.
From what you were saying. So January 31st is the deadline to buy the whole thing, not funded by the city, it's the residents fundraising, however.
Right.
But they fail, it goes back to being a small park by the Harrell family to
Yep.
purchase, give to us to maintain, and they get their 8-family development, so.
Yep. So, I mean, to
Get
Alderman
Peacock Park from it.
Kowalski, it gets to,
Peacock Park's
January
another one.
15th and they're $200,000 short. Certainly, the city could jump in and say, okay, we'll pony up another 200,000. Absolutely.
Alderman Kavieski.
I think this is conceptually a fantastic structure for addressing multiple issues associated with this. I think the devil is going to be in the details, for sure. Questions like what the city is willing to or willing not to do to bridge gaps is going to need to be confirmed to our community prior to our budget being complete. So we're going to need to have some sense of what we're prepared to do if there is a gap, because I think that'll give a level of confidence for those contributors. So I would suggest, and I'm gonna support this, but I would suggest that we take a look at this and the details associated with it to get the details into the public eye as soon as possible to help with those fundraising efforts that the community is gonna go through and into to make that a potential reality.
So in the public release, we've stated that the city will not contribute funds due to the operating costs and the upkeep for in perpetuity. So we've stated that publicly, and as a follow-up with our previous meeting, it also can always still happen. So I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to address from a budgetary standpoint. If you could add a little more clarity to that, Lou, that would help me.
Sure. So again, publicly, you've made comment that no additional funds will be made. That's not been a council discussion in regards to potential budget. We have some general affirmation to that, and I feel very comfortable with that, but we didn't talk about any of the specifics. You know, what if they're $50,000 short? Is this
Well, and
council prepared to say?
that's something you as a policymakers can
Correct.
have that discussion. My question is that something now or should we discuss in budget? What we did do in closed session is we discussed the ability to take the 525 property and have it operational in 2021. And in the budget, and you just saw earlier, there's a line item for $150,000 from the city to contribute, so we would have something that's functional and safe immediately. So I'll leave that up to you to continue that discussion. Alderman? Alderman Rozak?
Yeah, so I think from Andy's question, there's a little confusion in my head. No matter what happens with the 517 parcel, we're getting Peacock Park tomorrow,
Correct.
essentially.
Not
And-
tomorrow, but.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, effectively, it's ours at some point here in the near future. We've got a budget in our long-term financial plan to 150 grand to fix it up. So that's done. I think, again, this is all great, and I really appreciate the mayor's press release saying that we wouldn't put in more money, because I think the big open question in my head, which I've expressed before, is if we get this other parcel given to us, what the heck do we do with it? And do we spend $100,000 a year maintaining it, caring for it, fixing it up? Do we rent it? Do we rip it down? I still think that is a detail that has to be worked out, and I don't know how we do that, but I think we should grab at this opportunity now. Worry about that later, although, again, the devils could be in the details. That could be a major sticking point, and people need to know sooner rather than later if they pony up 1.3 million and they think the building's staying, what the heck are we gonna do with the building? Somebody's house.
Right.
essentially.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd rent it out.
I
you
don't
know.
think we're to a point where we can make a decision of what this is going to do because it's going to need a lot of city input. The goal and the objective is to acquire the land for the future and work on the details later so we can make a lot of assumptions and guesstimates. But I think this is for the community. And if it's for the community, they have to have a huge input on this. We may keep the house, we may not keep the house, but the goal is to stay focused on trying to raise the money. And that's the message we've been sending out. But if you would like a different message, this would be a good time to discuss that. Alderman Spiegelberg.
I think we should keep with the original plan that we don't have to invest anything in this 1.35 because I like the way that was stated in the press release, and I think it gives the public and the community ownership of this property without us having to step in and rescue it towards the end. If we do, maybe we do, but I really would have preferred to not make that public at this point, but now it is. But even if that's the case, if the public end up coming up with the whole 1.35, I think then down the road, we're still going to have some maintenance costs
Sure.
annually on this, right? I mean,
Well, and we'll also have no tax revenue. So we've also, those were given to you in closed session as well, so you know those figures.
Right.
Alderman Rogers.
I agree with Karen. I understand saying, look, if you get to here, maybe we can, I don't really want us to open that door. I like the idea of, look, if this is truly what the community wants, you need to find the money. Here's the amount, and here's the deadline for it. We're gonna ultimately still be stuck doing something with the lot, even after it's purchased. This program right here gives us a nice park on 2 lakes that'll be fun to kayak and do exactly what the potential is there. I don't really wanna put any cushion to try to help buy any of it, because we're gonna have to maintain it anyways.
Right.
My only question is, and I know this is a detail-oriented one, is there gonna be a crosswalk on North Lake Road with flashing stop signs? Because that's gonna get busy as all get up when that actually happens.
Good point.
That'll be
to make that happen.
That'll be
Yeah.
down the road. Got
Good
it.
point. Something hadn't thought about. Alderman Ellis, you,
I actually agree with Karen also. I think that if we set a precedent where we say, if you don't come up with it all, where, we'll step in as a body, sets a bed, a tone, because then I don't think they'll go out as aggressive as they would if they knew that they had to come up with it all. So I think that's a really good point.
Alderman Kavieski.
Please know that I'm not advocating for us to change that position.
Right.
But I've seen on this body before, where you come closer, things change. We, as a body, should have that determined. And your press release was very well stated. This body, the council, needs to confirm that and I'd do that tonight if need be, as a vote of, yep, we're nothing. As a method for helping to fundraise, some clarity for what goes on there should be made available again sooner than later, and that's all I'm suggesting, because the budget generally doesn't really get confirmed until November. So if we're not confirming the details of this to the community in November, so we leave December and January to raise $1.3 million and get over that hump, I think that's not setting it up for success. And some of that could be, hey, I got $600,000, I want to see that house stay. So that could be a contingent part of the fundraising that we haven't set any of the expectations for. That implies that we're going to have long-term maintenance and, who's going to charge for what, for rental. All of that just kind of needs to be discussed, is all I'm saying, prior to November. It maybe could be
Well, and
September.
a lot of the direction is for the group that's putting the fundraising together and to give them the ability to try to bring those things together. Alderman Mulder, you had a question?
Well, I was going to try to clarify, but I think if I understand what you're saying, Lou, it's that you think the group that's fundraising would want to have a vision for an understanding of what our vision might be for that property. Is that true?
It's always easier to fundraise to a vision
To a vision, right?
than not have a vision and have some unclear opportunity for going one way or another, right?
I appreciate that, because what I wouldn't want to happen is to have those people raise 1.35 million and then bring it to us and say, okay, here's what you're going to do with it.
Right.
I would prefer that we say, we either be silent on it or or if there is something specific that we don't want to get into renting a house, that we say, we will be taking down that house, or we will be converting it to another use, but I don't mind silence on it. I don't,
The challenge also is, we had a lot of discussions early on, is trying to get renovations and what it could look like and the options. And when you start going down that path, you set yourself up for failure, because you don't know what you want. And so the thought process with the group is that we don't know. We don't know if we'll keep the house. We don't know if we won't. Let's let the community decide. Let's make this simple. Put all of our energy into raising the money, because it's such a short period of time. So I can see both sides of that argument. And I think in the ideal world, if we had a perfect plan, we could do that. I think that'd be better for the community. I don't believe that time allows for that to happen.
Right.
And what's worse is creating a vision or an idea and then changing it. Just sort of like when they come to you with plans for developments and then it changes. You know how that feels. I wouldn't want that to happen. If the community knows what could or couldn't happen, then they have the choice to make that contribution or not. Alderman Rozak.
So what I'm hearing everyone saying so far is that we like the original press statement saying we're not helping out with the money. I like that too. I don't want to put more money towards our budget towards that. It's not in the item now. I'm not going to add it. At least I'm not going to add it. I would personally prefer there to be condos on the other side, because we're going to lose revenue. But I don't think silence is the right approach, though. I think what we should say as the council is we should just simply say, we don't know what we're going to do with it.
Be
You
honest,
raise the 1.35, and there will be another process later on to decide what happens with it.
Yes.
Because then everyone will know there's not going to be 100,000 contingent on the house staying, or it turning into a boat launch, or whatever.
Community center.
Yeah, no. We already have one on the lake.
No,
So I think it should be a very simple statement that, like the mayor said, let's focus on the fundraising. There's been no determination, and there will be no determination until it's purchased what's going to be done with it. You know, something really simple like that,
Black
and
and
that
white.
could just be from watching the
I
meeting.
second
or-
that, definitely.
Yeah.
Would someone like to make a motion to that direction, or would you rather we continue discussion?
Go with that direction.
I'm gonna-
I'd make that
I'd look
motion.
for a motion, please.
So moved.
Can you state that so that we have it for the record, please, Alderman
No.
Ellis?
I forgot it already too.
Exactly.
Grozak, can you?
Is that the fundraiser should be told that they will not be dictating what we funds, and they acquire it and dedicate it to the city. All decisions related to how the property will be developed, but it will be a park.
Yes.
May have a house, may not have a house.
Sounds right.
That's fair.
I'm gonna, so move
Sounds
that.
good. A second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Oh, darn. Aye.
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 Thought I was gonna go last.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
That's that.
Yeah,
Pardon
well,
me?
we still have to move to
Still have
approve
to
the
do it.
settlement
No,
agreement.
I just want to kind of delineate what I, as your city attorney, am looking for in a motion. So that it's very, very clear. What I am looking for. Can you talk in the mic here, because I don't care about them. To the three people that are watching this online, what I am talking about is giving me the authority to put into place a stipulation in order for dismissal of the, or entry of a stipulation and order that incorporates the, all of the details and, that are in my memo here that I have delineated to you. It will not come back to you. This will be it. So what you're, basically, the building blocks of this thing are, as I indicated, we're gonna get the Peacock Park, we're gonna make it a park. We have till January 31 for the public to, basically, it's an option to purchase, and that it will be de-restricted and given over to the city. If it is, the money's not raised, they are gonna get the authority to have building permits pulled on February 1 to build what they presented. Now, what they build has to meet all building code requirements and zoning and all of that. But it's not, nobody's gonna get another kick at this. So,
Okay,
that's.
let me take a shot at that motion. I'm not gonna include all that stuff.
Okay.
So what I would say is, I'll move to approve the settlement agreement between Waterview Condominiums LLC and the City of Oconomowoc as outlined in the letter at council meeting, and more specifically as amended with the addition of the recent vote on the use of 517.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Attorney Riffle, we're good?
Attorney Riffle, my wife is one of those three. She said, thank you. She's watching.
That's right.
Let's move on to another new.
Oh, sorry.
16.
16.
Nice.
Hey, we're moving up. Awesome.
We would like to move on to our city clerk, Diana Conan. Consider act on changing first floor hours of operation at City Hall, here at our location, 174 East Wisconsin Avenue. Ms.
Thank you, Mayor.
Conan.
Good evening, Council. As we outlined in the memo in your packet, City Hall currently has varying hours of operation by department, and in order to provide service consistency and address confusion to our customers, I, with support of the mayor, am requesting to change first floor hours of operation at City Hall to be 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. for the finance, utility billing, and clerks departments. Our customer base is primarily residents. However, we also serve businesses, business employees, developers, contractors, visitors, and vendors. And the trend over the years is that more customers want to come in earlier. They are asking for services as early as 7:30 in the morning. They really are not coming in anymore between 4:30 and 5 because they find that they can get business taken care of earlier in the day, on their way to work, on their way to a job site, et cetera. You know, and we as staff have seen the number of customers dwindle over the years between 4:30 and 5. We have very few within a week. You know, we can probably a lot of times count them on one hand. Of those customers that do come in, those few, a lot of times they're looking for police, DPW, zoning, or other services. So the staff that is there in what I call the general office area really can't address their needs. So their options are to come back or leave a message with us, and then those departments will get back to them the next day. The varying hours leads to confusion because the customer really cannot be expected to remember the different hours within City Hall. So our customer levels would remain the same. City Hall will be open for 9 hours a day. The customers can utilize, as they have been doing all along, the Dropbox, online payments, mail-in payments, and using our phone system. So they leave messages to us in the evening. With that, really, since we do not regulate the hours of operation by ordinance, only a motion to approve the change is needed. And so I thank you, and I request your consideration for that.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Conan? Someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion to change the hours to 7:30 to 4:30. Effective immediately.
Second?
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to our next item, discussion act on impacts due to COVID-19. This is a request by Alderman Kavieski, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Recently, we've had an order, a mandate by Governor Evers that masks be worn inside. There are various exceptions. It is something that became a topic of discussion within our community. We did provide a public statement in regards to the enforcement of the mask mandate. I actually support that statement in regards to enforcement, but it is a continued topic of discussion for policy. As a result of that, I thought it would be appropriate to bring it forward to council for continued discussion, questions to our police chief, our fire chief, and any potential action that would support the current statement or alternate statements that we would like to make.
Do you want to start us off with your statement, or how would you like to proceed?
Sure, I'll start out with my statement. My statement would be inclusive of what my previous position has been, which is that I would encourage our residents and our businesses to adhere to Waukesha County's guidelines as well as CDC guidelines, that those remain guidelines that best fit their life, their health at the time, and the operation of their business. I believe even in the mandate, the number of exceptions and the way that it is written, it has started to create some aha, I gotcha moments, and not everybody knows what the individual who is wearing or not wearing a mask is currently in, which is why I support the statement that you provided in regards to enforcement. So again, seeing over the weekend, some of the comments on social media, some of the statements received personally, it's definitely a policy issue. And I would like to publicly confirm your position that was provided directly after that mandate was provided to the community.
Open for discussion? Alderman Rozak?
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. So I think with the governor's mandate, I mean, Chapter 323 gives him the power to do these emergency kind of orders. I think he's outside of his power, the way I read the chapter. It's within 60 days. He's been overruled by the Supreme Court. It's over with. But I also think it's beyond what we should be taking a position on as council members. That's just my personal opinion right now. We have state legislators, senators, and assemblymen and women who should be working on this if they agree with us, and they should challenge it. I don't know that we should do anything more to challenge it. I approve, and I sent the mayor an email right after that decision from us kind of came out saying, you know, hey, there's a mandate, please comply with the mandate. Please don't call us if there's someone not wearing a mask somewhere. And I think that is the absolute right approach. I 100% support that approach. Not only does it make sense, but it's common sense, right? I mean, we've got 26 officers in the city. They can't be running around because someone walked into Roots without a mask on. So as long as that stays the same, I'm happy where we're at in the city. And I don't want to take any further action or position. That's up to the legislature to do. That's not our spot, so.
Alderman Zappel.
Just want to Thank you, Alderman Rozak, for making that statement in regards to the legislature. They need to take action in regards to this issue. Just had a question with Chief Bowen here. We discussed this the other day, and I noticed this on your agenda, the purchase of the ventilator. Could you just explain that?
Sure. Well, during the COVID pandemic, we did see a surge in our ventilator usage. Ventilators right now are 12 weeks delivery time, if not longer. With applying for the FEMA grants, that was something that was eligible for us to apply for. However, you have to purchase it first and then hope you get the reimbursement. So when we went from using the ventilator on average 4 to 6 times a week to using it, or a month, to using it 3-4 times a week in the months of April and May, and we only have one, and that serves both of our hospitals and our patients. And we were transporting our residents to long-term care, specialty care that could
Including
care for them.
Shore Haven and all the other.
It was
senior-
mostly from the ICUs in the hospitals going to other ICUs. So our EMS bureau chief brought it to me for consideration. It was an unbudgeted item, at which point I brought it to the fire board due to the pandemic. And knowing that we are going into flu season and we are expecting COVID to be ongoing through the flu season, so we expect to use the ventilator again more frequently, so we took it to the fire board. If we were not to obtain that federal grant, we do have the funding assistance program from the state of Wisconsin, which right now we do have $10,000 allocated. That purchase price was $20,000 for the second vent. So we do have one if that first vent breaks or is already in use, so our constituents can still get that service and get to where they need to go. So the board did approve it, and we're hopeful that we can get 87% of it funded by the.
And thank you for that explanation. I really appreciate it. And as I mentioned to you, I support that, life-saving measure in regards to the community.
Good?
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Yeah, I have a question regarding enforcement for the PD actually, and this would be a circumstance where what if a business, so say like Fleet Farm has a mask policy, and I'm just throwing out Fleet Farm, and what if, somebody goes there, they don't have a mask on, Fleet Farm asks them to put on a mask, and the individual won't, Fleet Farm asks them to leave, the person doesn't leave, does that generate a trespassing situation then? Is the PD gonna respond in that
If
situation?
they call us, yes, we would respond. That would
Okay.
become either a trespass or disorderly conduct.
Okay,
situation.
thank you.
Alderman Zaffel.
Attorney Riffle might be able to answer this, or Chief, but I believe the Attorney General mentioned that it's the county health officer that would be enforcement of this, correct?
Or the DA.
Okay.
And neither one will do it. This is what I wrestled with. I put together a memo, or my office did. First of all, our firm represented Dane County, who actually created an ordinance. And it was challenged, and we won. We got the challenge kicked out because the legislative body, adopted a law. And so you can enforce that law. You can attack the law as being unconstitutional, but you have a law in place. So, the chief and I were talking today, so he gets dispatched to the library, for instance, and somebody's just sitting there, no mask on, just reading a book, minding his or her own business, and the officers, well, there's a governor order here. I'm gonna write you a citation. What's he gonna put on citation? There's no law that he can write down that you could go into municipal court and prosecute. So that's the deal that we have here, which is why the Attorney General, to his credit, recognized that. There are specific provisions in state law that allow these health-based statutes to be, implemented and prosecuted by the DA, who's not gonna do it, by the health officer, who's not gonna do it. So it's kind of a hollow thing, but it's aspirational in nature, unless you, as a body, say, we're going to take that order, we're gonna make it law in the city of Oconomowoc. And I don't think that's gonna happen.
Alderman Rozak.
Yeah, no, great explanation, Stan. I agree. It's not an ordinance. It's not a statute. That's a violation. And just to be clear, Alderman Zaffel, I didn't suggest the Assembly take up this issue. I suggested if the Assembly or the Senate don't like the order the governor passed, they should challenge it in court or pass an alternate order or throw it out, which I think they have the authority to do.
I agree with you.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Alderman Mulder.
I guess I was pleased to see this come out, only from the standpoint that
I felt as though I was certainly getting enough feedback from District 1 residents that they wanted to hear what we had to say on this. Many said, don't ever let me wear a mask, and everybody else said, make sure everybody wears a mask. So I think it came from the appropriate place. I don't think it necessarily comes from us, and since it supersedes anything we would say, I certainly wouldn't. I know there are many people on both sides of this with a lot of strong issues, so I don't think a statement from us is appropriate, because it would merely be grandstanding at some level, and I have people that want grandstanding from both sides, so I wouldn't be willing to make any statement on that.
Alderman Schulpepper.
That as leaders of our community, that we lead by example and meet our community members where they're at, wherever that may be. And if they're wearing a mask, God bless you. If you're not wearing a mask, God bless you. The division that is going on in our community and the judgment associated with that is divisive, more so than the mask. Just people are where they are. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I hope that that I've led by that example and will continue to lead by that example, and that others in the community that have made it a mission to take a judgment position understand that it's not productive. And it hasn't been productive, and it won't be productive in bridging that divide, and that we all stay safe and be kind. And I think that that's directly from one of your mandates, and I like that mandate. Be kind. So as a leadership body, that is where I think we should make our statement.
Any further discussion, or does anybody have something they would like to bring up as an act on this topic? Then we're going to move on. Let's move on to mayoral appointments. Have our city clerk come up and talk about the mayoral appointments. Diane Conan, please. These are requested for council confirmation.
Okay, thank you. So the appointments we have a new appointment to the Community Development Authority, Bill Moomey. He does have an application in the council packet. We did request a resume, but he was not able to get it to us in time for packet publication. We also have reappointments on the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have Jake Nicholson, Mark Gempler, and Robert Morgan as a second alternate. We do have Kenneth, let me back that up. We do not have any documents from these gentlemen. I looked in the file, and I did not have original applications from them for service. And we did reach out, but they did not respond. I do know that when they were appointed, they all came in and spoke with the mayor at the time who appointed them, and that mayor felt that they would be an asset to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they have been serving on it ever since. Ken Brotheridge did provide a service application and a resume. He has also been serving on it for a number of years, and he acts as the chairman, and it is part of the mayor's duty to appoint a chairman to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that is what Mayor Magnus is doing here. He's naming him as the chairman, and that's a yearly appointment. And I can't really answer many questions about the candidates, but they have been serving, and we do not have frequent Zoning Board of Appeals meetings, and they do a good job. You know, Jason works with them, you know, to get for the hearings and, you know, to have them render decisions.
Also, for clarity, Ken is also serving on the Plan Commission.
Oh, yes.
Alderman Zapfel.
Normally, I wouldn't do this during appointments, but I just want to comment on the individuals being presented today. I've had it's been 3 years since I've gotten to know Bill Mumi, who's been nominated for CDA. I've coached sports with Bill. I've gotten to know Bill. Our kids are friends. He's a great asset to the community in District 1. He is the HOA president, I believe, for Peps Farms,
Yeah, District 3.
or District 3, sorry. And then the other individuals being nominated as well, I've had the privilege to get to serve with on the zoning appeals before I was elected to serve as alder.
Alderman Rozak.
Yeah, I know Bill too. I'm glad he applied. It's good to get some new blood in there. Is Mark Gempler former Judge Mark Gempler? Okay, then I know Mark too.
Yes.
I clerked with Mark.
And in those 2 appointments, we still have 2 open seats, as I've alluded to in emails. Like to entertain a motion to approve mayoral appointments for council confirmation.
So moved as presented?
Second?
Call roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
We'll move on to staff reports, and Diane, we're going to have you come back up, please. Thought it was valuable to give you an update as to where we are on the elections. We have elections coming up shortly this month, and hats off to you, Diane. You've been doing a beautiful job trying to maneuver through a period of uncertainty, so thank you.
Okay, 1 second, it's not wanting to, yeah, would you, please? It's not wanting to load. I'm not clicking it fast enough or something, huh? Thank you very much. So I have put together for you this evening 3 slides comparing elections in 2020 to the election environment of 2016, which is also a presidential year. And so that's why I've chosen that year, because it's more apples to apples. The difference in these elections is COVID and how it has affected not only the voters, but the way the clerk's department administers elections. So before COVID, preparation to facilitate an election focused around voting at the polls on election day and some mainly in-office absentee voting. Since the start of the April 20 election, so, starting in March and so forth, the environment has absolutely forever changed. We must now facilitate the huge swing in how a voter votes by a mailed absentee ballot. This process is manual, very manual, time-consuming, work-intensive, and requires additional office staffing to process. So on the first slide, I am comparing the April 7th, 2020 election, the actual numbers, to the April 2016 election. So the total number of voters was very similar. In 2020, 6581 versus 6855 in 2016. So I'll always read the 2020 numbers first and then the 2016. So the number of voters actually decreased in 2020 by 274 votes, or 0.04%. This is more than likely due to COVID, those few that couldn't get out or did not want to come out. The total number of ballots voted by absentees, so that's any ballot we mailed as well as anyone that came into the office to vote, was 55,087 compared to 5,587 compared to 1,414. That's quite a huge difference. It's a 395% increase in 2020 of absentee voters, 4,173 voters. The next is the total number of voters at the polls. So we had 712 come to our Kmart facility versus 5,441 that went to the 4 polls that we normally hold our elections at. That was a decrease at the polls of 764%, or 4,729 people. So the voting conducted by an absentee ballot, in 2020, we had 79% of all votes cast by an absentee ballot versus 21% in 2016. So that is a huge swing in absentee, and the workload with an absentee is a very long process, very manual. The next slide, this is a little harder to do, so bear with me because I don't have actual numbers. So I'm looking at the August 11th, 2020 election versus 2016, August of 2016. So I have the first line, I've compared the absentee ballot requests that we have processed today as of 4 p.m. And that includes mailed absentee requests and in-person. So far we have processed 3,526. We do not have that type of data for 2016. The absentee voting ends on August 7th here in the office, as well as 5 p.m. on the 6th, we can no longer mail out an absentee ballot. So with a few days left and the way they're coming in, I'm projecting we will have issued approximately 4,000 absentee ballots by Friday. The number of absentee ballots returned as of noon today is 1,536. So we have 2,000 ballots that we have mailed out that are still outstanding. In 2016, we had 510 ballots returned. So we've already doubled that with the return ballots for August. So I am projecting the total number of voters to be 3,200. And I know I'm saying that approximately there will be 4,000 absentee ballots. We're not going to get all those returned because individuals who have requested them, when they made the request in April, they asked for all elections. A lot of individuals had no idea there was an August election. So they get this ballot, then they look at it, and they see what it is, and it's a party preference ballot, and they say, well, I don't really see a reason to vote. There's basically every office is not challenged, one office, congressional, under the Republican. So if they're not returning them, I don't believe we're going to get all of them back. I could stand corrected, but we don't have that many more days. We have only about 5 days for them to get me those ballots back. So that would be a whole lot of ballots coming in the mail in the next couple of days. So the total number of voters in 2016 was only 1,727. So that is already, we're going to pretty much double that for this election. And this election is typically about a 2,000 voter election. So absentee makes it easier, more convenient, so we're going to get higher numbers. So the percentage of absentee voters, if my projections are on target, we're going to have 48% vote by absentee versus 29.5% in 2016. So on the last slide, I'm looking at November versus November 2020 of 2016. So again, I'm working off projections. So the total number of votes I am feeling will be around 10,000, since in 2016 we had 9816. Now we could go higher than that, but our registered voters are about 11,300. We have never had 100% turnout, so I would be really surprised if we did, but so I'm going with 10,000. Our absentee ballot requests on file so far, so those are people who, starting in April when they made their request, or in August, they're asking also for the November ballot. I've only gotten 3,334 requests so far. I expect to have about 7,500. So I still have a ways to go, and that's going to be a whole lot of requests to process in a short period of time. And that's why I'm, telling you as well that staffing, when you start getting that many coming in every day, it's very hard with the staffing level of 3 in our clerk's department to get that workload done and everything else. So the absentee ballot requests projected, like I said, are 7,500. Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Mulder?
What's the manual process? What do you have to do to process one?
The manual process is, there is a form the voter has to fill out in order to get it. They have to be registered, of course, so if they're not registered, you have to register them. Then they have to, on another form, fill out to request an absentee ballot. We have to see photo ID for that. Then we have to take that form and go to our computer and go into the statewide voter system, and we have to log them in as requesting an absentee ballot and that they have provided us photo ID. And then we have to click issue them the ballot, which takes us to another screen. And then we have to actually go get the ballot, give them the ballot and an envelope, and they have to fill out the envelope. And they have to then vote their ballot, put their ballot in the envelope. Then we have to come back to the machine, and we have to note it as received. And then we have to sort these envelopes with ballots inside by district alphabetically. And we have to put them on a spreadsheet. So when we take them to the polls on election day, the poll workers are checking them off to make sure we've accounted for every ballot that we have received, and they're issuing it a voter number. We can, in the larger elections, pre-number the ballots. So we will spend the entire Monday before the election pre-numbering these, and it will take the entire day to do that because of the thousands that there will be. Then we do have, as we receive them in the mail, when they're coming back in the mail, we now have to go back into the voter system and we have to log them in as being received. We have to look them over for completeness, and if they're missing a signature or a witness, any critical information, then we have to try and contact the voter. So we always have a stack of problems that we are trying to deal with. And when you're getting closer to the election, you run out of time to correct the problems, and what happens is then those ballots get rejected and the voter's vote doesn't count. And that is a very difficult thing to tell a voter who has taken the time to vote their ballot, but due to whatever reason, they didn't get it done right. And we didn't get to reach out to them quickly enough so they can correct it. There are some other steps, but it does take time. We also get duplicate requests because unfortunately, voters who go into the MyVote system and request that ballot, we have a lot of special interest groups that send out mailers, and we're dealing with that right now. The mailers, when the people get them, they think, oh my gosh, I have to send this in. And they've already gotten a ballot and mailed their ballot back, but it confuses them, and they are thinking that if I don't mail this card in, my ballot won't count. So they mail it to us, and then we get it, and at first we started processing them, and then all of a sudden we realized, oh my gosh, we've already mailed this person a ballot. So now we have to check them in, we have to check our lists, and if they are not on our list, half the time, more than half the time, they're not providing photo ID, and that's what the little card tells them to do. So then we have to call them to try and get the photo ID, and it just keeps going on and on. There is just a lot of work. And, you know, of course, we have to keep them locked up in a vault, so protect them for Election Day. And, of course, on Election Day, the voters have to open all these envelopes and feed them into the machines. And because they're an absentee ballot that's folded, they constantly jam the machines. So you have to really be at the ready and you know, so it doesn't clog the machine up so it becomes inoperable. So you have to stay on top of that. So there's a lot of things that go into that absentee ballot. You know, it's all part of the job, but when it is this enormity of requests that we have never dealt with before, we are obviously not totally equipped to handle it. And we've learned a lot from April. We're getting better in August, and we're going to get even better for November, but it is still, it is what it is, and no matter how hard we prepare, we won't, the workload will still be overwhelming.
Alderman Rozak?
Thanks for all your efforts there. I know it's a lot of work, and with the mail-ins and the absentees, it's going to be crazy. What I'm hearing you say, though, is that voting in person's probably easiest.
It is. Well,
Somebody
that's,
fills in a form and puts it in the machine themselves and you're done,
Yeah.
right? You get counted and you're done.
that's what elections were designed for voting in person at the polls. Absentee was designed to help those who maybe were a sequestered juror or in the hospital and things like that, and it has grown, and now it's become a convenience. And of course, with COVID and the fear of illness, it's going to become a way of life, because those that have used it, if I've talked to them, they've said, this was pretty easy. I like this. I think I'm going to do this from now on.
So the process is changing a little bit.
It is. It's changing a lot.
Thank you.
Alderman Kavieski.
Two quick questions. So we're gonna keep the 4 polling locations that are typical within our city and not convert to a consolidated poll location like we did in April, correct?
We're keeping that option open, but the plan is to go to our 4 polls. We are doing it in August, and the plan is for November. Since I have to mention one thing. I was notified by the school district last week that for the November election, we can no longer use the Greenland School for District 1 or the Arts Center, which is attached to the high school, and that's District 3. So we will be moving District 1 to our new police facility in the community room. And so District 1 will vote there. And the Arts Center will now vote at the Fire Station 1, Western Lakes Fire Station. And I had looked at that site for April before we had the Kmart building, and I had worked with Chief Bowen on that. So it can work, and that's going to be the polls, and those will be the permanent new polls unless something else happens. So
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good, yeah.
they'll all be in city-owned facility. Well, technically not city-owned, but they'll be in municipal
Affiliated.
buildings. Yeah.
Alderman Zaffel.
Thank you, Diane, for all the work that you and your staff are putting into this. And if you haven't already thought about it, but please communicate on social media and other channels in regards to the polling place location changes, just so we can, as elected officials here, also communicate it out to our constituents as well.
This is my first public notice, if you will. It will be followed up with lots of other communication, because we do have to give a minimum of a 30-day notice to change a poll, and we are required to, get the word out in as many ways as possible.
Alderman Kavieski.
Based on the numbers, do you have an anticipated number of volunteers that you're going to be targeting to help assist, or would there be a number of volunteers that would be helpful in the days or weeks coming up to the actual election date? A department of 3 processing this is overwhelming, and our community does respond to the challenges that we get to deal with, and it might be something along with the poll locations, the number of volunteers that you're looking for, because I bet you we can find them for you.
We do have the list from April that we can work off of. I have a list of volunteers that, I get all the time. There are, ways that I can reach out to try and get more, just like in April, though, and it depends where COVID is at the time. I had everybody I needed until the time got closer and closer, and they kept dropping off. And then all of a sudden, I didn't have enough. I have enough right now for August. I'm in good shape that way. I anticipate being in good shape in November. However, it's, I have to plan for both, and that's what I'm doing. We are gathering names, and people are reaching out constantly with volunteering, and that is so wonderful that the community and the people in it are stepping up that way. I have to just make one comment, and I maybe could have answered the absentee ballot process with just this comment. Alderman Shaw asked me one time, because he had volunteered and helped for some things, how many times we touched the same envelope through processes, and it's 21 times. So that, I should have said that in a nutshell for you.
Wow. Wow. Any further questions?
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Diane. Really appreciate it, and love seeing all the numbers and some of those trends to help us understand the ramifications. Let's move on to reports and comments from aldermen. I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand if you have a comment or something you'd like to say to the public. Alderman Zapfel.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to thank the Harrell family, specifically Pat Harrell, for the gift and continued commitment to our community. It's going noticed very well by many individuals I speak to in the community are very, very appreciative of their gift to our community.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to mayoral comments, and I have none, so I'd like to see a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All for coming.